ጥቂት ነገር ስለ ወገኖቻችን እናገርና እነሱም ራሳቸውን እንዲያስተዋውቁን እድል እሰጣቸዋለሁኝ። ወንድማችን አስተዋይ እንደምታውቁት በቤተክርስቲያናችን ውስጥ አንዱ ስትሮንግ የሚኒስትሪ ኤሪያ የቺልድረን ሚኒስትሪ ነው እና እዛ ጋር በዋና ኮሚቴነት ከሚያገለግሉት ውስጥ አንዱ ነው። ከቺልድረን ሚኒስትሪ ውስጥ በጣም ሲግኒፊካንት የሆነ ስራ እየሰራ ነው ያለው። ግን ስለለመድ ነው ትንሽ ልጅ ይመስላል። አስተዋይ እንደዚህ አይነት ሰው ነው። በአሜሪካን ኤርላይንስ ማናጀር ኦፍ ኤርክራፍት ኢንጂነሪንግ ነው ሆኖ ነው የሚሰራው። እንግዲህ በዚህ በሙያው የቀረውን ነገር ስትመጣ አስተዋይ ትነግረናል። በዚህ በሙያው በሚሰራበት ጊዜ የሰዎችን ሬዚዩሜ ማየትና ቅጥርን የማስተናገድ እድሉ አለው። ግን እሱ ካለፈበት ነገር ምንድነው የሚነግረን ከአስተዋይ እንሰማለን ማለት ነው። እነኚህ ሶስት ወገኖቻችን በሶስት የተለያዩ ጉዳዮች ላይ እንደሚነጋገሩ ባለፈው ማስታወቂያውን ስንናገር ሰምተናል። ኢዘር በኢንተርቪው ጉዳይ ላይ ምን እንደሚያጋጥመን እሱን አንስተው ይነግሩናል፣ ወይም ደግሞ ሬዚሜን በተመለከተ ምን ነገሮችን ማካተት እንደሚገባን ይነግሩናል። አለበለዛ ደግሞ ከዛም ያለፈ ደግሞ እንዴት አድርገን በሙያ ዓለም ኔትወርክ ከሰዎች ጋራ እንደምንፈጥር የተለያዩ ርዕስ ሶስቱም ተከፋፍለው ያናግሩናል ማለት ነው። እህታችን ሳባም እንደዚሁ በአሜሪካን ኤርላይንስ ውስጥ የምትሰራ ናት። I will leave the rest of the introduction for you, but at least ይሄን ያህል መንገድ ርቃ የመጣችው እህታችን አናሊቲክስ ዴታ ሳይንስ ኤንድ ፒፕል ስትራቴጂ ኤክስፐርት ሆና ነው የምትሰራው በአሜሪካን ኤርላይንስ and she said that you are new to Texas, right? 3 years 3 ዓመቷ ነው በቴክሳስ እና hopefully you loved it. ቴክሳስ ጥሩ ሀገር ስለሆነ ማለት ነው። ግን ይሄንን ማይሌጅ መታ የምታስተምረን ያው እሷን በሙያ ከ20 ዓመት በላይ በዚህ ኤሪያ ስትሰራ ቆይታለች። ወንድማችን ዳግም በተለያየ አጋጣሚ ከመድረክ ላይ ታዩታላችሁ። ዳግም በአይኤስኤን ሶፍትዌር ኮርፖሬሽን ኤግዚኪዩቲቭ ቫይስ ፕሬዚደንት ኦፍ ፕሮዳክትስ ሆኖ የሚሰራ ያለ ሰው ነው። ጌታ ይባርካችሁ በእውነት በዛ ኃላፊነት ላይ ግን ለኛ 3 ሰዓት መስጠት it's too much። እናከብራለን ያንን። እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። ጥቂት ስትመጡ ስለራሳችሁና ስለቤተሰባችሁም እየጨመራችሁ ብትነግሩ ፈቃደኞች ከሆናችሁ ደስ ይለናል። በተረፈ ግን እግዚአብሔር በእናንተ ህይወት ውስጥ ኢንቨስት ያደረገውን እዚህ ተቀምጠላለን ትነግሩናላችሁ። ወንድማችን አስተዋይ ወደዚህ ጠራሃለሁኝ። ጌታ ይባርካችሁ።
All right. It's very interesting because I just want to talk in English a little bit, and I might just add a little more Amharic, but this is an interview. We interview in an environment where everyone speaks English, so just bear with me. I'll try to balance a little bit. So anyway, እንደምታውቁኝ አስተዋይ መኩሪያ እባላለሁ። በዚህ ቸርች ውስጥ በጣም ከምወደው ፓርት ወይም የቺልድረን ሚኒስትሪ ውስጥ አገልጋይ ነኝ። 6ኛ ክፍሎችንም አስተምራለሁ። That's my passion. I love those kids. በተጨማሪ ስለ ራሴ ብዙ ፓስተር ተናግሯል። በአሜሪካን ኤርላይንስ ውስጥ በኢንጂነሪንግ ዲፓርትመንት ውስጥ ማናጀር ሆኜ ነው የማገለግለው። በእኔ ስር ያሉ ልጆች ወይም ኢንጂነሮች ናቸው። ሁሉም ኢንጂነሮቹ የምንሰራው ስራ በአሜሪካን ኤርላይንስ ያሉ አውሮፕላኖች ጠቅላላ all the airplanes we are responsible for the software distribution, configuration management and everything. I mean a lot of you know about 737 Max, I hope. The situation, the software situation, we are responsible for that. My team is responsible for that. On top of that, my team also responsible for coding some of the aircraft software. The aircraft is very smart nowadays. It can speak, it can talk, but you have to find a way to create some kind of a report back to the ground station. So my team does that. And at the same time, I'm responsible for aircraft network security program for the whole entire American Airlines. After I said a little bit about the aircraft network security, what that means is really airplanes fly today, there is a risk of any kind of intrusion. So my team is responsible for that. Actually, I am the focal for the airline on any kind of those situation. I work with cybersecurity and all other group of American Airlines. One more thing though, the most passionate thing I do in American Airlines is the recruiting effort. I do go to colleges, I do go to conferences where we can recruit engineers, recruit students, engineering students for co-op and internship. So I do have a lot of experience. I'm not saying by any means I'm expert on interview, but I have done a lot more interviews to hire for myself and at the same time to hire for my peers, my other engineering departments. So enough about me. The reason I'm talking about myself is to encourage you as well to talk. Later on, Saba will come and talk about networking. It's extremely important. Before we go to the to the interview, network, and resume, the two important items, because those are the things that get you to the door. And what I'm talking about is once you get to the door, what you need to do. So remember, pay attention for the network. I'm saying again and again, because if you don't have that network, you don't have opportunity to interview. So even within our church, we don't talk about network. And I was talking to Pastor Dide. I said, we don't even know who they are sometimes. We love them, we're brothers and sisters, we hug, we talk, but we never ask, where do you work? What do you do? Those are important. When you meet someone, do that. Start talking, start engaging. And those are important items. That's the beginning of network, and we'll talk about that later on. And the QA will follow. You will ask any questions, we'll try to answer those. So, what is interview? Really, all right, I'll just go overview what I'm going to talk about interview. First, what is interview? Oh, I can see it over there, okay. And second is, before the interview, what do you do? What we need to do. And during the interview, which is really important, and after the interview. So first, what is interviews? Can you raise your hand? How many of you have you ever been interviewed or interview? Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it? 1, at least 1, 2. No? 3? I think you all have been in the interview. The objective of interview is talking, right? With some kind of objective. So you have been interviewed. Every interaction we have is an interview when it has got objective. So if you didn't raise your hand, you're mistaken. Because interview is a way to communicate with objective with somebody else. But what is job interview? That is the most important one today. So if someone asks you again, have you ever interviewed? You said yes, because you talked to and actually, my son is here. This morning we were talking about some important item in the car. There is objective. And we were talking, we arguing, and just sharing ideas. That is interview. So I have done interview this morning before I came. So everyone has done interviews. So, and I'm not gonna go through each one of them, but usually, employers have some objective. What is that objective? If I'm an employer, if I sit in the interview panel or I'm interviewing someone, I have an objective. Those are the objectives: can and will and how. Can you do the job? Can you willingly you can do the job? And at the same time, how can you fit into the the company objective and the company culture? Those are really important items. So you and your job is to impress them. And a lot of people, they say you have to sell yourself. And I'm going to give you the slides. The reason I had a lot of information in this so that you can take the slide with you. And I can send it through, Pastor, I'm going to send it through email. So don't worry about it. So how can you fit, and even before you apply for the job or just before you go to the interview process, you have to think about, do I fit in that company? Does that fit into my objective? Later on, we can talk a little bit about career objectives and your goals and as such. You have to think about, before you apply for the job, does the company fit into my objectives, my plan, my career? We all have career aspiration, where we want to go, what we want to do. We don't want to apply for a job just because the job is open, right? Because that's really a recipe for failure, because you're not going to succeed in the interview. So before the interview, this is really important, you know. Saba gave you all kind of network hints, and you know, she put you in the right situation, in the right place. You are ready, and Dagi will tell you how to write your resume accordingly so that you can get that opportunity for the interview. You're stepping into the office or whatever that interview is going to be conducted. Prior to that, what do you need to do? That is what we're talking about before the interview. So first of all, as soon as you see that opportunity and through the network, a resume, online, whatever you need to look your resume. We'll talk about that. I'm not going to explain a lot about it. Check your resume. Does it fit into the job description? All those, prepare key selling points. This is really important. So you know what the company is. You know the job is. The job description is extremely important. Now you start thinking about, and how can I sell myself to this position? So think like 2, 3, or maybe 4 occasions, selling points, you know, and how can I explain those? I'll talk about a little bit during the interview as well. Those selling points become very important when you sit with the interviewer or the panel. So research the organization. It's extremely important. You have to know what the organization is, what they do. And I was talking to Saba last time, and I was in an interview for Black Engineers Association. I mean, trust me, these kids, they look sharp. Forget what you've seen outside, you know, dressed up, tie, you know, nice suit and everything, and very young. They're seniors and juniors. They try to get a job in American Airlines and others. And this conference was big, and like 150 companies in there, and American Airlines was one of them. I was one of the person recruiting. So this kid came to me. He just walked right in front of me and said, he gave me his resume and said, can I get a job? And I looked at him, I felt so bad because I can see him, he's very young, he's dressed up nice, but he didn't know how to handle himself, right? So what did I do? Took him to the back. I said, come on over here to the back of the booth. I sat down with him, what he needs to do. I did ask him, the first thing is like, hey, do you know about American Airlines? He said, no, yeah, I flew American Airlines. I said, oh, okay, good. So I said, sit down. So you flew American Airlines, what did you see? What's the airplane? Did you check the, anything, the magazine, the movie? Did you see anything? It's like he started talking. I said, okay, I want you to go back. I want you to go research, because there are so many places you can research about companies. Their website is extremely important. In today's world, just search. You will get a lot of information about that company. Recent stuff, what's going on with the company. So he did. And I told him, go back, research and come back. This kid. And interestingly, I was talking about him as well. I said, is there anybody graduating from college? He said, no, I am the first one from my family. I felt so bad. I felt so good at the same time. So I was there, and I have the opportunity to help him. So I told him, go back, research about American Airlines. This is what you need to do, and come back. And I was waiting for him the whole day. He didn't show up. I said, what did I do? The next day we came. That kid was the first in line waiting. And I told him not to see me, but my friend. So he looked at me, confident, so empowered, and he walked into my friend. He shook his hand, as I told him. I'm going to talk about how we shake hands. First impression, right? He shook his hand, he looked his eyes, he started talking to him about American Airlines. He did not pull out his resume. He started talking. My friend is like, can I see your resume? He pulled out his resume. He gave it to him. My focus and attention is on their discussion. I was just listening. And finally, he shook his hands, he said goodbye, and again, my friend came just, you can't believe our story. This is the best candidate we have. And he put 10. We put 1 to 10. And I was like, yes. So what I'm telling you this is because before you come for the interview, you have to understand the company. You have to know what the company does. You have to know what your contribution for that company. Otherwise, you will not be successful, okay? There are so many ways you can research. I'm not going to go through this because, as I said, I put a lot of information so that you can take it with you. Research job and occupation areas, job description, similar current issues, prepare your questions, practice. Practice is extremely important. If you need to, you just ask your son, ask your daughter, ask your wife, just tell them, sit down. I have an interview. Just, these are the questions you want me to, I want you to ask me and how I'm going to, when you practice that way, you feel comfortable. When you feel comfortable, you don't have to, fear, anxiety. Those are the most important things. And if you have fear and anxiety, you cannot perform. So practice. So during the interview, okay, now this is the important stuff, right? First impression. How many seconds do you have to impress someone? Anybody? You walk in, you see someone, you only have 7 seconds. 7 seconds to impress someone. My attire, okay. If I'm going for an interview, I don't care. I'll dress up. When I say dress up, be careful what you dress up. Not colorful stuff, right? This is very simple, but it's fundamentals. How you dress. Usually, blue, gray kind of, suit are very, good, safe. Blue shirt is good. Blue, black, pants as well, black is good. And ties, acceptable sometimes without tie. I have done multiple interviews for myself as well without a tie because I know the company culture and I just kind of like, no, tie is not important. But it's not going to hurt to put a tie. But sometimes people, as I said, I've never put a tie, and if I didn't put a tie, it will feel uncomfortable. Yes, it might. What you do? The day before, put a tie in the house and just walk around just to feel comfortable about that tie, because sometimes you don't feel, it's just a new thing you put in your neck and you feel like it's weird. So do that. Attire is very important. Introduction, the first thing you do, how you introduce yourself, right? A lot of people, they introduce, especially our culture. Pastor mentioned this in the past. We don't see people on their eyes. Please, practice. You have to see people on their eyes. And handshaking, it's extremely important. Handshake, 2 seconds. Strong handshake. And usually you get all the way there. Strong handshake, but not break their hands. And then don't stay there. There is a habit in Ethiopian culture to put the other hand on top. Please don't do that. When you shake hands. Just give them their hand. Your hand. And stand firm. And this is very minor things, very fundamental. People, do they see these things? Not really, but it's conscious. They know. They just judge you just by the way your handshake is, very soft, and you try to take it out as soon as possible. Or if you just hold it a little longer, they feel like, what's going on? This is not normal, right? It's just trigger in their brain. So be careful how you shake their hands, how you look their eyes, and smile. I'll call it a flight attendant smile, because you know what? You don't know they're mad at you or you're not happy, but you know what? When they see you, they smile. They just show you their teeth. So use a flight attendant smile as much as possible. Sometimes you walk into this conference room, bigger conference room or small offices, and sometimes interviewers, they might not tell you where to sit. Be careful, because that's intentional. Usually they don't go through that length to judge you, how you're gonna, choose your seat and whatnot. But usually they just say, "Oh, have a seat." If you've been asked to have a seat, if they didn't indicate where to sit as close as to the interviewer. The first person you meet, to the conference, to the interview panel is usually the hiring manager, the first person. So select the nearest if possible. Usually they will indicate and to see you in front of it. Find a place, find a chair, a seat where you can see most of the panel. That way you can just interact with them. That's important. All right, make eye contact 2/3 of the time. I mean, you don't have to stare at them all the time, just be relaxed, look at them. Sometimes you can look at something, but 2/3 of the time you engage with your eyes. That's important. Okay, so sit relaxed. That's our problem, right? We kind of sit like this, and we're not relaxed. Our hands are just like we don't know what we do with our hands. I wish if I have a chair here, I'll show it to you. But, usually you sit, chest up a little bit, confident, not cocky, right? You should show the confidence. And your hands are sometimes, you don't know where to put your hands. You know what? If it's a table, put them on your lap. Don't put them like that, This looks like, I'm too confident, just like empowering, thank you, Pastor. So this is practical. Yeah, this is what we do for sixth graders here when we teach them. So yeah, here we go. I sit here. If I sit like this, what do I look like? I'm just kind of like, I lost all my confidence. But if I sit like that, confidence is just a little bit to them, and I say I'm ready. I don't want to put my hands like that on the table, but I try to put my hands a little bit lower. You know what? But when you talk, put your hands out. And don't just move them too much. Just a little bit, Try to explain. Smile all the time. Show passion, what you're talking about. And the way you see, the way you talk is really important. And I have an interview about like 2 weeks ago. It's not for my, position, my job, my team's position. It's a different team. And this guy is really good. But the problem is he's too passionate. He was smiling extremely, and he was just talking, and he's moving his hands. I said, it's too much. I can't handle it. So you have to be very careful. You have to show your passion, but over passion, it seems like you are really desperate for the job. So you have to be smart how you sit, how you talk. The confidence is really important because they're going to give you a job, right? So are you ready to do the job? Do you have that confidence? That's important. So I'm just going through this, hands usage, as I said. Do not use them all over the place. Use them smartly. Just, move them with a distance. Don't, swing it and, maybe you might hit the interviewer if you do that. So be careful. Yeah, check your impulse. Never use first name. Okay, this is important. Usually our culture, we use a first name. I just keep calling Saba, Saba. But it's not the right way. And I say, Pastor died. That's what we do. That's our culture. But naturally, in the interview, we don't use the first name. We use the last name. It's important because you don't know them. Most of them, you don't know them. If you are interviewing in your company, maybe you know them. If you are close, it's kind of okay. But using last name is the safest thing. Mr., Mrs., Miss. That is really important because, if you call by first name, you feel like, your friend. You're not a friend at that point. You're there to get the job, not to create friends, right? So be careful. Just speed, Candace, to other people, you have to be very careful. Look at them. This is really important. If it's a panel interview, there might be like 2, 3, maybe 4 people in the room. And watch them, see, and notice. When you answer, sometimes they may nod for you, but they may not. Sometimes it seems like they're puzzled by your answer or something. By looking, you understand, and you try to correct that, or you try to make to fill the gap, right? Sometimes that's the gap. They didn't understand what you're talking about. You can see their face, just understand. I mean, if the interview is too kind of like, the way they talk and everything is very formal, try to match that. Be in the moment. Don't be out of the moment. Really, the moment is important because it's you. You're the focus. But you have to match the cadence of the discussion. And you have to listen. During the interview, if you don't understand the question, it's perfectly normal to say, can you say it again? I didn't understand what you mean. It's normal. And instead of just try to say something which is not related, it's just embarrassing because the question is something, you answer something else. Be careful. Yeah, body language. This is really important. You have to make sure. And this is about like 15 years ago. I applied for a position. I went there. I was talking to the interviewer. He was using his pen. He was chewing his pen. And I was thrown out of I can't focus. The body language is telling me he's not really interested. And I knew right away. He just invited me just for the sake of inviting me. Maybe it's just like the NFL coaching kind of thing. You have to have one block. Maybe. I don't know. If you get the joke. But it's very interesting. He was not interested at all. And because, while I was talking, he was just shuffling papers and he's looking something. I felt like, okay, you know what? He's not interested. And I'm not desperate for the job. And truly speaking, I started talking. I did what I have to do. And I left. And I knew exactly what the outcome is because there's no interest. But sometimes you can see the body language. When they are interested and when you talk about something, you can see their face. You can see their eyes. And they want to know more. And at that point, you have to add more a little bit. Do not talk too much on one question. 30 to 40 seconds is what you got. Because if you start talking, you're exposing yourself for a lot more questions, which you may not answer it. So 30 seconds is what you got for one. Unless, you may need to explain a little bit, and you can come back to it later on. Sometimes, those 3 points I said, at least 3 things you have to remember. You can use them in your back pocket for different questions. I'm going to touch a little bit about the questions later on. Okay, typical questions. This is normal, 99% of the time. Tell me about yourself. This is the first thing they do ask you. And I've done it 1,000 times. How do you respond to that? Oh, I am married and I got 2 kids and I came from Ethiopia and then, no. Tell me about yourself is what you're going to bring for me, for the company, for the position. So when I talk about that, I have to tell them who I am. Not about my family. It's not about my background. Educational background or work background is important, but not about where I came. So remember, this is the most important thing. Saba will explain about the 30-second or the 60-second elevator speech. She will challenge you. If you have that, use that in this. Because who I am. And my name is Astoy Makuria. I have a 25 years experience in American Airlines, from aviation maintenance technician all the way to managing a group of people in software engineering. My team is responsible doing that and this, and I am really eager to do this, and I'm going to provide this for the company and for the position. It's 30 seconds. I'm going to tell them everything, but it's 30 seconds with confidence, with not remembering. Memorization is a bad thing, because if you lose something, you lose everything. So don't memorize, but know it. Just keep saying it, and you know what? Once you say it, you'll be good at it. You have to remember that. That is important, because anytime when you meet someone, you use it. You use who you are. So it's an important question, and it set the stage, really. After you tell them with confidence who you are, what you do, what you're going to bring, literally about 25% of the interview is almost over because they know about you, really. So next thing, about the job. The interview is just like, are you interested about the job? What's the job brings? All this stuff, I'm just putting these things. We'll talk about it during the network, or if when you have a question, we'll talk about those. But really important, prepare. Because there's so many information out there nowadays. Really, YouTube has got a bunch of stuff. How to respond, how to act, how to say. There are so many websites today. You can just look through the website how you can answer questions. And some of the questions are really general knowledge as well. So this is really important because a lot of interviewers, they use the behavioral type interview. Instead of just a direct question. Maybe a couple of direct questions. Tell me about yourself, what you're going to bring for the job, why we hire you, all those stuff. Just very simple, direct questions, right? But the company is looking for some type of behavioral question. What is behavioral question? Behavioral question is just like really the past, what you have done in the past, and what will bring it to the present. So your experience from the past and what you're going to do today for me, for this company. So usually I call it STAR. People, they put STAR. You heard about STAR. It's the same thing. Situation, action, result. So if you put to remember STAR, T stands for task. I like the STAR because it's very simple. The situation, the action you took, and the result. For example, then the question could be like, tell me a situation where you have in a conflict between you, two employees, how you handled it, right? It's a situation, so you have to remember those three things you put together before the interview. That will come handy. So you think about an employee. So what's the situation? Yeah, it's very interesting. I have that situation. Actually, it's last 2 weeks, and I have two employees. They disagree because one of the employee working on this project, and the project requires this and this, and a lot of disagreement. They can't work together. So that's the situation. What action did I took? Yeah, because this project is really important. I sat them down. We talked about the goal and the end point, the end result of the project. So I need to work with them, and I filled the gap. I did whatever I did, and then what's the result? The result is after my discussion with them, both start working. The project is done on time, and this. So you see the sequence. Have them ready, so that you can say it without any problem. You can't, one thing I don't like, people just like, That is a problem, because you don't have that situation. That means you're trying to remember some situation during the interview. So if you are prepared, if you know exactly what to say, it's easy. So that's why prior to the interview, have them in your pocket. Okay. Questions to ask. A lot of people will say, if you do it, you don't have to ask questions. But if you don't have any questions, it tells me something. I want you to ask a question. It's just a simple question. I love this question. This is really important. I want you to use it. I used it so many times. There's a reason for it. Where there's any question I don't provide that, what qualification does your ideal candidate need? Those are the questions, okay. Okay. The first one is what I would like you to take a note. Were there any question I did not provide or adequate answer? By saying that, you put them on the spot to fill the gap opportunity for you. Because now they will say, we were saying this, but you didn't. And now this is the opportunity to fill in whatever you forget to say, whatever you did not say. Now this is the opportunity, and actually this is really a good finishing point and finishing touch, I'll call it. You can say, I told you this is what I did, this is how I've done through my life, and that I'm passionate on this, and this is what I've done. All the good things you've done, you will tell them, and says, I'm passionate for this position and I can do better and I can provide this to you, and really you're telling them, hire me, I'm ready. So this question will guide you to say that. And a lot of times, interviewers, if they look at them, if they say, well, you're right, no, it's okay, you're done, that tells you something. So now just use that opportunity to fill the gap. And sometimes they will say, here, when we ask you this, you say this, but, and then you're gonna, so you kind of like, finishing the whole discussion by using that opportunity. The rest is very simple. What's the opportunity for personal growth? You ask these questions because you have to know before you get to the job. What is your opportunity? We'll talk about it a little bit during the QA, and if you guys have a question about career path. One of my mentors told me the first time I had this mentor, I was excited, and I was talking to him. The first question he asked me is like, oh, what is your 5 years plan? I was like, oh, what, 5 years plan? What is that? I was like, no, I don't have it. He's, okay. You know what? Go back, sit down, spend, whatever, write them down, and come back, and then we'll talk. He forced me to write my 5 years plan. And he said he showed me. He didn't show me the whole thing. He showed me on his iPad what he wrote. And it was really important. He said, you know what? Unless you have a plan, you can't execute. So if you have a plan within the next 5 years where you want to be, that's the guiding, that's the beacon, that's the guiding light. So, we'll talk about it a little bit in there. So does it fit into your 5 years plan? That's why you're asking the company. After interview, I'm not going to go through that due to time. It's extremely important to say thank you. During the interview, before you leave, you say thank you for giving this opportunity. And at the end, when you go home, right away, may not be, but a day after, within 2 days, write a nice letter saying thank you, and just say something. And ask if they need any more information. It's not going to hurt. So do that. And for yourself, assess. Just think about the interview. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And because I'm going to ask you to talk to them, even after they said, oh, you're not qualified, we have hired someone, ask a feedback. It's important. That's how you learn. Without the feedback, you can't learn. You don't know what you did. So ask and write, and just understand what you did right, what you did wrong. So I'll leave you with this. And the lady sitting there, having fun because the interview is over, and the feeling of just being over is an amazing thing. But I want you to feel like, yes, I got the job and it's over. I think I get the job. Your job during the interview to make their job, the interviewer, harder to select anybody else. That's it. You don't have any control over who they're going to pick. At the end of the day, they decide who they would like to have for the position. But your job to go there to challenge them to pick you, or to make it harder for them not to pick you. So that's your job. Use that opportunity. Use the interview as your, way to impress them. And it's very, very important, because you can have a stellar resume, knowledge and everything, skill, talent. Unless you do good on the interview, you may not get the job. So this we will get it. Deadly interview. Mistakes. This is very fundamental. I didn't say anything. You have to show up at least 15 minutes early. Don't show up 30 minutes early. It looks like you're desperate for the job. If you show up early a little bit, you know what? Just go to the restroom, fix yourself up. Make sure your tie is correct. Make sure your shirt is, tied and needy or whatever. But don't show up late. If you show up like even 1 minute late, no reason you give them is not satisfying. So just be early as much as possible. 15 minutes. Don't do it too early. It's very simple. We talked about this, and I will leave this for you. Just to let you, just don't put perfume. That's important, because if you wear perfume, the first impression, as I said, if they smell that perfume, and if that perfume is the perfume they don't like, or, smell is a very important aspect of our sense, right? You will never forget something you smell. So you don't want them to remember something you don't want them to remember by just putting something. So just, deodorant is what's needed. Don't put anything. It's very simple, but I have to say it. I've seen people just wearing too much perfume, and it's very destructive. When I was taking my MBA class, there's one thing they taught us about 7-Eleven, how 7-Eleven coffee is very popular in Japan. It wasn't. The Japanese people never drink coffee. This is about 15 years ago. Coffee is nothing for them. But 7-Eleven was known for their coffee here in the United States. So what they did is they kind of start, making candies with coffee taste. The smell of 7-Eleven coffee in 7-Eleven, they intentionally did that. What they did, the younger generation in Japan start smelling those coffees, eating their candies. They become coffee drinkers because of the smell. So the smell stays with us. Studies are shown all the time. So perfume, please, it's not going to help at all, okay? So there are some of them here. You will take them with you. You look at them. It's very simple to say for me, but it's not simple. You can just follow. If you have any question later on, we'll talk about it. I think there are some web resources for you. We're here. We're together on this journey. If you have some interview, please let us know. We can set up a mock interview if it needs to be. We'll talk about it and what you need to do, when you are at a time of interview. But before that time, I'll let Saba up here to talk about how do you get to that interview, right? Saba, my privilege to invite Saba out here. Thank you, Saba.
Thanks for the invitation, Alex. I'm privileged to be here. Thank you. My name is Saba Beyene. I also work at American Airlines. I'm the managing director for revenue management and data science. So that's the money part of the company. We are at the center where when you see prices of airline tickets, that's my team. There is my team involvement there. Price optimization, yield management, and data science is what my team does. And we use all of the data that we have, historical data, and all the information from competitors and everything else to set the prices. But a little bit about me, I went to the University of Asmara. I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics, and I came to the United States to study, to get my master's degree. So I have a master's degree in statistics. So I am a data guru at heart, and I'm also known, I work the data guru. I have been in this field for about 20 years. I've worked for several companies, including Walmart stores and the University of Arkansas as well. I started my career here at the University of Arkansas in the United States. My role was setting up technology, data analytics infrastructure systems to enable the business school at the University of Arkansas to teach statistics and data science. From there, I went to Walmart. Walmart has its headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas. So I spent about 10 years in Arkansas. If you ask me, there was no Habesha. I probably was one of two families. And I have a beautiful family. My husband, very supportive husband, his name is Michael. And I have two daughters. One is 21 years old and one is 12 years old. The 21 years old is now studying mechanical engineering. She goes to MIT and she's about to graduate this year, so we're excited for her. And our 12-year-old is also doing phenomenal. They're all into mathematics and science. I don't think I have any influence in that, but it's probably had to do a little bit with that. So I'm really excited to talk about networking because it's really, really important. And when we think about networking, we just think about, something we have to do. We do networking every day, right? And I love this quote. The currency of real networking is not greed, but generosity. I love it because you don't just do networking to get something out of it. You have to want to know people, and also you have to give back, right? So it's give and take. What that means is when you introduce yourself to people, when you meet people, it has to be mutual. You don't go talk to people because you wanted to get something out of them. You want them to get a job. So because of that, you don't do networking when you need a job. You don't do networking at work when you do need a promotion. You got to be doing it all the time with good intentions and with authentically, right? So if you're looking for a job, and then that's when you're starting to network, it's not going to work, right? Because you have intention, you want to get something out of it. So just think of it, you have to be doing networking and you have to give back. What does that mean? So when people come to me and talk to me about a job, when they just need a job, it doesn't feel authentic, or it doesn't even feel they're coming to me when they need something, right? Especially, I'm going to focus a lot about when you have a job, right? A lot of times we would have a job already, but we need to grow our career. We need to grow and get promoted and find, different roles. In order to be able to do that, at work every day, we should be doing the networking, and we should be giving back as well. So what does that mean? When you ask somebody to be your mentor, for example, you got to ask them what they can get from you, how you can support them, how you can provide anything they need. So it has to be give and take. So that's why I just love this. It cannot be you do when you need something, right? So I can't emphasize enough about that. So Alex put me to shame because I didn't create a lot of slides to take, but I just wanted this to be discussion. So I want us to discuss. But he mentioned as well, you have to have a plan. What do you want to do with your life? What is the role you want to play if you're in an organization? What is it that you love to do? Because when you think about work, we spend pretty much a lot of our time, more than 50% of our time at work. So we have to love what we do. It has to be something that gives us fulfillment and something we enjoy, right? So I love doing data analytics, and I spent a lot of time, especially at Walmart, my career was in people analytics. And my role was analyzing the people data. Walmart has 2.2 million workforce, and they have a lot of data. And my job was analyzing that data and come up with recommendations on how we're going to make Walmart the best workplace, the most diverse workplace, how we're going to make it a place where people grow, people enjoy working there, people are compensated well, right? So there is a lot of data that we analyze, and the recommendations are going to make people's lives better. So I really, really enjoyed that. So you have to be thinking about the job I'm looking for and the role I want. Is it going to give me fulfillment? Is it something I want to do in my life? Because it has to be win-win. You just don't want to go and get a job just because you needed a job and be miserable, right? So have a clear plan and goals. Alex, again, talked about 5-year plan, right? It may be hard when you're just trying to find a job to think about 5 years later, but have a little bit North Star, right? Where do I want to go from here? What is it that I want to do? So that's going to be really important. And, you have to have a purpose, right? What is your why? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do this? When I think about me, why do I do what I do, right? I work really hard. Alex mentioned I travel a lot. I have teams in Tokyo and other places. I travel a lot for my job, but I really, really enjoy it. And what's my purpose? Why do I work this hard? Because I want to provide for my family. I have family back home I want to keep supporting. I have 2 daughters, like I said. I want to be the example for them that they can succeed, they can win. I want to make my family proud, right? My family lives back home in Asmara, and my dad visited, and he was very proud when he was here. When I took him to my workplace. So I want to keep them, be proud of me. They, sacrificed a lot for me to go to school, to send me here, and I want to make them proud, right? So you have to have your why. Why do you do what you do, right? And so I'm going to skip a little bit, right? So storytelling, right? We have a story. Each of us have our stories, especially the immigrant story, right? We didn't have it easy. Most of us have came through different obstacles, and leaving your family back and coming, it teaches you a lot. So think about your story and how do you frame that to leadership capabilities, right? The perseverance that taught us, the struggles and this, all the challenges you faced that made you a better person, all the things that you've done and that made you grow as a human being and as a person, right? So there is a lot of leadership qualities that we learned from our history, from who we are, right? So I talk about who are you, what's your story. When you're doing networking, unlike when you're in an interview, you have to focus on the role, but when you're doing networking and meeting people, tell them who you are, what brings you here, what defines you, what makes you tick, right? Who are you as a person, and what do you do, and why do you do it, right? Give them a little bit of who you are, because as humans, we connect with real humans, right? You cannot be fake and expect people to open up to you, right? So define your story, think about who you are, how you got to where you are, and how does that relate to the leadership capabilities. I am a problem solver because I've learned quite a lot in my life because we've had a lot of challenges growing up. I'm one of those people. I went to Sawa and I went through military training, which has its own challenge, right? There are so many things in your life who made you stronger and capable human. So connect that to the leadership capabilities each company needs, right? So make sure you're connecting that to that. So what's your story? Who are you? And then know your worth. A lot of times we think, well, we're just so small. We make ourselves shrink. Let's not do that. Make sure you're talking about your capabilities. The pastor talked about this lady that has mechanical engineering back home. So how do you connect that to the things you want to do here? How do you bring it up? How do you make sure you're taking advantage of that? Don't make yourself small, right? So connecting the dots for people, telling them who you are, what's your story, what makes you who you are, and what makes you tick. All of those help people connect with you, and then they see that you can face any challenge, you can solve it. At the end of the day, when you think of a company, when they're hiring somebody, they're looking for someone who is going to help them solve problems. Alex and I work at American Airlines. It's a very complex problem, right? He's dealing with the aircraft side of the business. My team is dealing with a lot of the competition. It's a very competitive environment. We're facing the pandemic. Before that, it was 9/11. It's one after the other, problem after problem. And you cannot solve it with just one mindset. You need people who are strong mentally, emotionally, and they can be flexible, thinking outside of the box. And all of those qualities, life teaches you, right? So that's why they hire, and they're looking to hire diverse people from different backgrounds that can bring different ideas to the table, right? So don't think that, they're going to hire somebody else and my accent is going to be a problem. I say it here. Different is beautiful. Different is needed right now, especially when it's very challenging environment, when there are a lot of open jobs out there. Make sure you're putting out there, make sure your voices are heard, and make sure you're connecting the dots for the person who is interviewing you and who is networking with you. But again, like how I started, networking cannot be just when you need something. Do it ahead of time, making sure you're doing it all the time with an intention. And then a lot other times, other thing I want to talk about is I grew up in Asmara. We never talk about ourselves. That's bragging. You don't do that, yeah, right? And Well, you got to talk about what your worth is, who you are, what you bring to the table, because that's the culture here, right? So it's not bragging. Make sure you know how to talk about yourself. You have to be able to sell yourself. Otherwise, if you don't sell it, you're not going to find a buyer, right? So don't think that's bragging. Make sure you are able to sell yourself. Again, so many times it's been talked about elevator pitch, right? Alex talked about it. It's so important. You have to know yourself and be able to articulate to people who you are, what you bring to the table. How are you going to help them solve their problem, right? People are selfish. They want you to explain how you're going to help them. It's all about them, right? Make sure it's about them. Tell them how you're going to help them, and have that clear definition and speech ready, because you don't know who you're going to meet, right? Who you're going to see. So you have to have that speech defined. And then the other thing is, for me, I'm in the data technology analytics space. Man, that space is evolving. If I just get stuck what I studied back home 15, 20 years ago, it's not going to take me anywhere. But I have the foundation, right? The foundational things are important, and it's easier for me to stay up to date. I go to conferences. There is a lot of material out there, webinars, and Google is your best friend, right? Know what you want to learn, but reinvent yourself. Keep learning about your space. Even when you have a comfortable job, make sure you're learning and bring new ideas to your workplace, right? So it's really, really important to keep reinventing yourself. You cannot get stuck because you will be left behind, right? So that's also important. And then ask for feedback and listen when people talk to you and take really good notes, right? Because a lot of times we just want to hear what we want to hear, but we don't hear what other people are saying, right? So it's really important to ask for feedback and hear what people are saying. And in that sense, there is really, really important things that, especially for some of you that are already jobs, at work, outside of work, it's really, really important to have a mentor that you can go talk to and they can give you real feedback. Real feedback is important because a lot of times at work, they don't tell you the real one, right? They will just like, oh, you're doing fine. Then you're like, if I'm doing fine, why am I not getting promoted, right? You're not telling me what I need to work on. So you want at work and in your mentorship, people who are going to tell you real feedback that will help you get to the next level, achieve your goals. So really, really important. So when I think about having network, especially at work, there are two groups of people I think about. There are mentors and there are sponsors. Mentors are people who you go talk to and you will ask them for opinions, for advice. You will tell them the good and the bad, what's happening at work, and they will help you, mentor you, guide you, and tell you what to do. Sponsors are other groups of people. Most of the time, they are at a higher level than you that are going to be speaking on your behalf. For those people, you don't really tell them the bad. A lot of times, you just tell them all the great things you're doing, how you're helping the company, how you're accomplishing your goals. You keep feeding them and making sure they know who you are. Because they have higher roles, they will speak on your behalf at some point when the opportunity arises. So it's really, really important to make sure you have sponsors at work that are going to speak on your behalf. And make sure you're staying in contact with them, you're spending time with them, and telling them what you're doing really well at work. But again, to my earlier point, this has to be mutual, right? What are you also going to give them, right? What are you going to do? Ask them in your specific field if they do something else and you're in data, give them an opportunity. Can I help you with anything that's data related? Whatever that might be, make sure you're not just using them, you are giving them what they need as well, right? So, but also when you come to meetings with your mentors or sponsors, make sure you're well prepared. Don't waste their time, right? Make sure you are You have really good questions. You know what you're going to get out of it, and you are spending the time together wisely, right? So when I think of elevator speech or networking, I don't think of it as just one-dimensional or something you do before the interview or something you do at work. It's really multidimensional. Just like the interview, we're every day doing it. We're doing it all the time. It's just what's our intention? How are we making sure it's intentionally telling people what we want to tell them, helping them to know us as humans, who we are. Then when it comes time to cash in that investment that you make, it would be easier to ask them, okay, we've had this relationship, and you will say, hey, you now know there is a job I'm interested in this department. Do you know somebody that can help me? And then they will speak on your behalf, right? So you're trying to make sure as more people as possible know about what you're doing, what your passion is, and what you want to do, and you get the support you need. But at the end of the day, also to do all of that, if you are somebody who is interested in career growth, development, and have that passion, you're going to need support. You have to have family and friends, church members that go with you that are going to support your goal, right? Because you don't want to be wasting your time with people who are not going to support you. So make sure you're spending your time wisely. Spend your time with people who push you, who challenge you to be better, not people who drag you down, right? So that's really important. I think a lot of time in our community, we spend time with people who are not fill up our cup, right? They're going to drag us down, right? So we have to be making sure we're selective, we're spending time with people who help us, flourish. They want to develop with us, grow with us, whatever it is that we want to do. So that's really a big decision we have to make earlier on in order to grow, right? Where do you want to spend your time? Where are you going to spend your time? That's a decision we all have to make. And then, similar to what Alex said, confidence is important. Like, you have to be confident in your capabilities. And if you're doing, reinventing yourself, you know your space, you know what you're good at, confidence will start coming in, So it's really, really important to be able to say, hey, I am capable and I am able to do this. And I'm going to articulate what I'm going to bring to you, what I'm going to bring to the table. And this is who I am, right? Confidence is important. You have to show confidence because nobody wants to have somebody, they're not sure about it because they're not going to be sure about the decisions you're going to make and how you're going to solve problems for them, right? What else? All right. Purpose is important. I think I talked a little bit about it, the why, but you have to have some kind of document that you when you keep thinking about these things, write it down, keep refining it. The same for your elevator speech. Write it down first and keep refining it. As you learn more, as you know more, you refine it and you become really, really precise on defining yourself. What do you bring to the table? Who are you? And with that, you will start having people that will support you. For me, I have had huge successes, whether it's at Walmart, whether at American Airlines, having people who are willing to support me. Also told me that how good I am when I was not even sure, right? So you want to be associated with people who are going to support you, but also who will see something in you that you didn't even realize that you have, right? I remember working at Walmart, and it was my first big corporate America job. I was a little bit shy. I wasn't confident about my accent. I was always, speaking quieter, etc. So this woman told me, she said, "Hey, do you know how good you are? Like, you are really, really good. Just do this." And it kind of started giving me confidence. Okay. Because sometimes people see you more than you can see yourself. So associate yourself with people who are going to support you, who are going to push you to be better and succeed. So with that, I will stop here, and but I will be available. I will be happy to answer any questions you have, but it's been a privilege to talk to you this morning. Thank you, everybody.
Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you, Astu and Saba, for sharing your experiences. Now I know if my airline ticket prices go up, who is responsible for that? And I do agree, networking is such an important topic, and I agree that we don't do networking when we have to get something from someone. We do it in our day-to-day life, just like the opportunity that we have today. It's an opportunity for us to meet each other. The other thing with networking is in Ethiopia, and this was one of my shortcomings as well. When we meet somebody, we just say, "Hey, salam and dana hoy," and that's how the conversation goes. One thing that I've learned from my mentors is, particularly one gentleman who I highly admire and respect at our place, our CEO. When he introduces himself or he meets somebody, the first thing he says is, "Hey, I'm Joe. Nice to meet you." He always says his name, and that's how he opens the conversation. It forces the other person to tell the person their name as well. So big differences, things like that in our day-to-day lives are important. So I'm going to talk about effective resume writing. Maybe before that, a little bit about myself. I think I know most of you, or hopefully I've seen you. I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering from Amist Kilo, for those of you know Amist Kilo in Ethiopia. And then I worked for about 3 years at the Civil Aviation Authority and Ethiopian Airlines, and then came to the US for graduate school. I did a master's degree in industrial engineering, and then started working in Houston. I was so excited, finally, I finished school. I can get a job. I went through all the interview processes. I had a great opportunity to work for a company called Dynagy in Houston, so worked there for about 1.5 years. Unfortunately, this was right around when the Enron debacle, some of you might remember Enron, the big accounting issue they had early 2000s. When that happened, the company collapsed, and I was back to square one. No work permit, no job. So when that happened, I decided to go back to school and did my MBA. And then I had the opportunity to intern at a company here in Dallas called ISN Software. And I came back full-time in 2005 for that company, and I've been there since then. So this is my 17th year. I've done a number of things in that company. It was a smaller company when I started, about 13 people. Now we're about 550. So God has blessed us tremendously. And for me, it's been a great growth opportunity. And my work allows me to interact with new college graduates. We recruit at about 20 different colleges, as well as experienced individuals. So appreciate this opportunity to share with you some of my observations around resume writing. All right, so before we get deep into how to build a resume, just want to talk about the basics of what is a resume. So we got always with me. So we'll talk about maybe a little bit about what's the purpose of a resume. Because in Ethiopia, I have prepared my CV, and I've seen the CVs of family members. It's a very long document, as Pastor pointed out. I think last weekend during service. And, a CV is a more academic document. It's multiple pages. It has all the history and papers you have written and interviews you have done. So it's a much more longer, more academic type document, and still used for, scientific type positions. But, 90% of the time, what applies to most of us is a resume, which is a much shorter document. It very succinctly summarizes your skill sets, your experiences, and how that relates to the job you're looking for. And typically a resume is maybe 1 page max, 2 pages, so very short summary. It is a marketing tool, right? So think about marketing that we see on billboards or commercials. You don't have the luxury of putting everything on a 30-second commercial or a billboard. So it's a very targeted message, and that should be the purpose of your resume as well. So how do you shrink your background, your history, and put it in 1 to 2 pages? It's a very challenging task. Well, hopefully we'll talk about some approach that would help us to find the nuggets, the important aspects of a resume. The other thing that's important to notice, we spend hours and hours writing our resume. I've done it. Most of you have done it. Your kids, if you have older kids, are doing that. When it gets to a hiring manager, a recruiter, they probably spend 20, 30 seconds on it. So it's a quick scan. They look at it, doesn't meet the basic requirement, doesn't make a good first impression, and then they move on. So again, this is something that you have to think in mind. Summarize it in a very succinct way, make sure it contains the key information, because again, no matter how hard you worked on it, you only have 20 seconds to have that document being reviewed. Okay? So that's the purpose of a resume. It's just your ticket to get an interview. That's the whole purpose. How do you impress a hiring manager to give you the opportunity to interview with them? The next one I want to touch on before we get into resume writing is knowing the position. I think both our speakers have mentioned this. You have to research the position. Whether you are an experienced individual, you're looking for a more experienced job, or you're an entry-level, college type individual, you have to understand what's the norm for your field, because you don't want to deviate much from what's expected from that particular industry. So let's say you're in the healthcare industry, or you're in logistics. Make sure that you understand what's expected of those types of positions. We'll talk more of these in detail, but these are some things to keep in mind. The last one I want to emphasize, keywords are very important. If a job description, maybe for a nursing job, has certain keywords that they're looking for, maybe it's a certification, maybe it's a specific type of training, or you could be in IT and you may need to have certain IT certificates. Pay attention to those key attributes, because what happens usually when you apply for a job is the resume usually gets entered into a database of some sort, a candidate tracking system, and it's computer algorithms that scan it and classify your resume based on those keywords. If you don't have those keywords, no matter how much experienced you are, that computer system may classify you in the wrong bucket, and you might lose out on opportunities. So pay attention. Whether I'm looking at a resume manually, I'm going to look for those key items, 20, 30 seconds, because I have 20, 30 resumes to go through. Or if it's a computer system, they're going to be looking for those keywords. So do your research, understand the expectation for that position. So let's get into, by the way, you don't have to take notes. We'll have the slide deck. I'm sure you can get a copy from Pastor as well. But here's the typical anatomy of a resume. It has about 4, 5, 6 key things. No wonder why resumes usually look very similar, because again, we have, as an industry, kind of gotten used to developing resumes that way. It's more consistent in how you present yourself, and the more you deviate from this format, the more you could stand out in a negative way, that you did not research, you did not follow what's expected. So typically, number one, you have to have a heading, up at the top that has your name, your address, and contact information. Number two, there is typically an objective, a 1-sentence summary of what you're looking for. And then usually there's a summary of qualification or tools you are aware of or software products you use. And then number 4, a summary of your education. And then number 5, your experience. And these two things could be interchange depending on if you're a college graduate. Typically, you'll have your education first and then your experience. If you are more an experienced individual, you'll have your experience first and then maybe talk about education later. And then finally, any other additional relevant information like certifications, honor memberships, activities that you've done, volunteering, those types of things. So this is a good, well-recognized standard for building your resume. So we'll go through each one of them one by one. I'll try to be fast, but hopefully this will give us some idea on how to build a resume, or if we already have a resume, how do we make it more efficient, more succinct. Header, usually at the top of your resume, that's the first thing you need to have. Your name should be bolded and large. Again, think about a recruiter. They have a pile of documents or they're scanning through resumes, and you want to stand out quickly in terms of who you are and your contact information. So at the top is the heading, your name bolded in large font, your address, contact phone number, and email. One thing I do see from time to time is, particularly for college graduates, those that are joining the workforce, is how your email appears. Sometimes it's not a professional email. Maybe this is an email that you, as a kid, put together, and Dallas kid, 20-something, or just something that doesn't really tell the recruiter who you are. So watch out for those. Make sure you have a professional email address that you use. Okay? So heading, very important aspect. The next one, like we talked about, is your objective. So usually about one sentence, sometimes two sentences. This is important because it tells me or a recruiter what you're looking for, the specific position you're applying for. And what you want to do is that objective sentence does not reflect what you want out of that position, but rather what you bring to the table for the employer, okay? So here's an example. The first example of an objective is this person said they're applying to gain a position where I can be an asset to my employer and grow as an individual. It's all about me, I want to grow, I want a position so I can grow, etc., etc. A better way to say your objective is, it is to gain a position as a nurse practitioner at Parkland Hospital. So really articulates what you're looking for, where, and be specific, so not a broad statement. That way, if I see that and I'm at Parkland Hospital, then that will catch my attention. One quick example from this week. I had an interview with a gentleman who was applying for a product owner position. It's a particular type of position for software engineering. And this person, he's already gone through initial resumes, initial interviews. I had to do the final interview. The first time I looked at his resume, it said his objective was to find a job in customer service and data analytics, whereas we're interviewing him for a product owner position. So that, to me, was a red flag, because this gentleman had customer service experience, had data analytics experience, but he's interviewing for a product owner position. So that was a yellow flag. Long story short, that person did not get the job. He had other issues on the resume. So do pay attention to what you put, not something generic that's totally different from what job you're applying for. So next, we talked about the header. You have your objective. The next that comes on your resume is the summary of qualifications. And this is your opportunity really to stand out in 3, 4, 5 bullet points that summarize your accomplishments, the work that you've done, your certifications, any outstanding achievements you've had, really something that I can glance over quickly and tell me what you have. And I'm generalizing some of this. I've seen resumes maybe for technical positions like software engineers, IT personnel, where they have to list. Data science is another one where they list in the summary the types of software tools they use, software language they can code, or analytics tools that they can use. That way the employer can see that and say, okay, This person knows Tableau and SQL and Excel, whatever the company is looking for that position. 3 to 6 bullets that really kind of summarizes the position that you're looking for. It creates the first impression. And then to the extent possible, quantify your accomplishments. So if you have 5 years relevant experience in a particular area, it would be powerful for the person to know, okay, this person has 5 years experience in sales, marketing, in nursing, whatever the case might be. So quantifying it sometimes is very helpful. Okay, so you put together your header, your objective, 3, 4, 5 bullet summary of what your accomplishments look like. The next step would be to put your education background, and this is particularly important for newer graduates, those that are joining the workforce, or you're looking for an internship, and you don't have a lot of work experience. So this is what you want to highlight from an education perspective. So you would put that, list the highest achievement you have from an education first, and then go downwards, going down to maybe other accomplishments you have from an education perspective. And also from a timing perspective, usually you would put the most recent accomplishment first and then work backwards. List your GPA. Usually if you have a 3.0 or above GPA, if you have a GPA that's below that, usually you want to leave that out. That way, right off the bat, you don't get disqualified. At least get that chance to present yourself. Maybe there's a reason why you have a GPA under 3.0, and that's typically the norm. And then any certifications, licenses you have, again, to justify that you qualified for the job as part of your education would be helpful. Okay, so here is an example of that education block in your resume. You'd have a section for it, the school name you went to, the date of graduation, and then in there would be your GPA as well, like we talked about. So very short, succinct, outline of what your accomplishment from an education perspective looks like. And then comes the experience section. So again, to revise our flow, we started with the header. There's an objective, there is a summary. We talked about our education. And then the next part would be your work experience. And again, if you're looking for, if you have had a number of years of experience, probably you would want to put that before your education. And then vice versa. For newer graduates, you want to put your education first because you just don't have that much work experience yet. When you think about experience, again, reverse chronological order, start with the most recent job you have, and then work backwards to the older jobs you've had over your career, okay? So start with the most recent one. Include your company name, where did you work for, in what city, and your roles and responsibilities, and then the time, the duration of your work experience. Those are expected, and pretty much a norm. If you did not list certain aspects of this, for instance, if you leave out the time, the duration of your work experience, that could be a yellow flag. So make sure you at least pay attention to these things and make your resume as complete as possible. The third bullet point, make it easy to read. Sometimes I've seen resumes that are more of a paragraph, like an essay. Those are very, very hard to read. So think about, again, as a recruiter, you have 20 to 30 seconds. You're not going to read through a paragraph, so make it easy to read. So maybe one line, one bullet point to highlight your accomplishments. And I'll show you an example here in a second. And then the fourth bullet point is important as well. Start those bullet points with an action verb. And basically action verbs are things that you have done or you can do versus what you are. So a good example of an action word is implemented XYZ, managed 5 junior team member, completed XYZ. So those kind of action verbs that show that you have done and accomplished certain aspects is typically the norm. 90% of the resumes that I see, if they're well written, use those action words. They start with completed, executed, mentored, managed, those types of words. And there's a reference of action words that you can use on the next slide. I'll show you that. But start with those action verbs, not something that you are or something that you have done as part of your activity. And then the last one is also important. Using the right tense in your experience section. So I talked about start with the most recent, maybe that's the job you have right now. For that, you would use present tense. I am doing X, Y, Z. And then for the older jobs, you use past tense, okay? This interview that I mentioned earlier, where the objective was talking about something different than the job, this individual had, in his old jobs, he's using present tense and describing what he's done 5 years ago. And to me, again, that was a yellow flag, just in terms of attention to detail, because that's going to be the reflection of the work product this person would do. And that was another reason that this person did not get the job. So pay attention to these things. For current positions you have, present tense. For old positions, it should be in past tense. Here's a reference of sample action words. These are what you can use, or if you have kids and you share this material, they can look at using these action terms in their resumes. Emphasize versus minimize. So we talked about a resume should be 1 to 2 pages, and you have to be very selective, especially if you have multiple years of experience and jobs. So you have to emphasize certain things that are relevant, and maybe not emphasize and minimize things that do not pertain to the job. So maybe when you came to the U.S., you had a position in an area that's not your core competence. You just needed a job, and maybe that job is totally different from what you have accomplished recently. So you can exclude those types of positions that do not pertain, just to make sure, again, you can fit the relevant information in 1 to 2 pages. List any awards and recognitions you have. Quantify, this is very important. If you have, I have managed 5 team members. I have mentored 20 new hires. To the extent you can quantify it, I think it sends a very strong message that you are an accomplished candidate and I should pay attention to you. And then, like we talked about, use keywords from the job description. Again, when I look at the resume, if it helps me connect to the job, you used keywords that I have outlined, it's going to be a plus. And then finally, think about emphasizing these qualities and skills. Again, as an employer, you're applying for a job. They're thinking about what's in it for me that you bring to the table, right? So anything that could help highlight your communication skills, your leadership skills. Maybe you have mentored new employees. That shows me that you're a leader. A strong work ethics, increasing level of responsibility. So think about in these terms, how do I highlight these attributes? That way, again, I can stand out. Here's an example of what the experience section would look like. Again, you have the key header, and then what you've done, the city, and the duration, like we talked about. And then 5 easy-to-read bullet points of what you have done, and see how each one of the bullet points start with an action word. Maintained, greeted, answered, received, trained, and it also tries to quantify what has been done. And this is a very succinct, very, very effective way to summarize what you've done and accomplished. All right, so last section is where you would have your activities, honor certifications summarized, especially if, for college graduates, newer graduates out of school. This is where you want to put in if you have participated in a club within your college, or volunteered at an event, or you have led a summer camp at your church. Those are the types of things you want to mention, again, to show what I mentioned a slide before. Is there evidence of leadership capabilities? Is there evidence of, giving back as a volunteer in the community? Those types of things. this is the perfect place to summarize those aspects. One last thing, when it comes to references, usually on resumes, I see this from time to time. You don't need to have references available upon request, or list your references. Typically, again, thinking about the space you have, you would leave that out. If the recruiter wants you to send a resume, they will ask you to provide contacts for references. So it's not necessarily important to have that in your resume. And then, by the way, if you have any questions on any of these, we'll have some time for questions and answers. Quick summary of do's and don'ts on the next slide. This is a good way to check and see, how your resume is today, or maybe double check what your resume that you're helping someone on can be improved. So do begin each with a bullet point of an action word. Mention experiences, paid and unpaid. Review your resume several times, and also have maybe objectives. If you're applying to a variety of positions, make sure that you prepare multiple. I know it's a lot of hard work. We all don't like that. I did not like that when I was looking for a job, to have my resume slightly tweaked for this company versus that company. But that's how you stand up. If you don't spend the time, you're limiting the chances of getting that interview. Look at resumes in your industry, how they're written. And then the last one goes without saying, but be honest and have integrity. I'm sure some of you have seen even individuals in a very senior position, years later, they somehow found out, the company found out they have lied on their resumes, or they were dishonest on a particular experience. And you don't want to be in that situation. Always be honest and show integrity with what you put on your resume. Other do's, in reverse chronology, always start with the most recent position. The next one is important as well. Use standard fonts in your resume. So typically like an Arial font, Times New Roman. Why is that important? Number one, you don't want your resume to be too flashy if you use a special type of font that a computer may not read, or the person would look at it and say, hey, you did not, this for some reason stands out, this is a non-standard resume. So keep it simple, basic fonts, 10 to 12 size, proofread, use the keywords, and then again, 1 to 2 page max. And then last bullet point, last slide, resume don'ts. Make it easy to find the information. Paragraph type formats, very hard to find information. Bullet points, much more easier. Don't tell everything that you've done. Be selective. Emphasize the relevant information. The next one is also important, particularly for some individuals coming from Ethiopia. I've seen resumes, particularly international applicants, where there is a section for birth date, whatever the birth date was, how old they are, married, non-married. They sometimes even have pictures of the applicant. All of these are no-nos, particularly in the US. You don't want any individual level information like that, your birthday, your social security number, your photo. Recruiters don't want to see that because of some liability risk associated with it. So don't put any of that information on your resume. And then, fancy fonts, avoid them. The only exception to that is I've seen some resumes for like designers, product designers, graphics designers, marketing designers, where they don't even have sometimes a PDF resume. It's all web-based, very fancy and artistic, which sometimes work very well for those types of roles. And then some resources. These are good websites. If you go in, they have sample resumes for a specific field. So if you're in healthcare, they have some examples. If you are in IT, they have examples. And as always, Professor Google is always good. So you can ask Professor Google for help if you're looking for a particular type of resume in a particular industry. That's all I have.
እሺ እግዚአብሔር ይመስገን። እንግዲህ አሁን ወደ ጥያቄና መልሱ ፕሮግራም መጥተናል። እናንተም ጥያቄያችሁን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ማይክ ይዞርላችኋል፣ ትጠይቃላችሁ። ጥያቄዎቻችሁን የሚመልሱላችሁም ደግሞ ብሪፍ የሆነ መልስ ይመልሳሉ። በተቻለ መጠን ብዙ ጥያቄ እንድናስተናግድ ጥያቄያችሁን ብሪፍ አድርጉት። አሁን ጥያቄ ከሳሚ።
እሺ ለረዝሚ ጥያቄ ነው ያለን ማለት ነው። As your experience, how you guys trust the resume? I just want to know how you guys trust that. How many percent do you guys trust? Because people, they can't have it. They can write something else. Maybe they don't have certified or not getting any college, whatever education. So how you guys trust that? How you guys comparing with the real after you guys promoted? Do you have any something else like to know the person or whatever? So I just want to.
እኔ አንዳንድ ነገሮች ብዬ ሜቢ የሚጨምሩትን ይጨምራሉ። ጥሩ ጥያቄ ነው። ሬዚዩሜውን እንዴት እናምነዋለን? አንዳንድ ነገሮች እዛ ላይ የተጻፉት ሰርቲፊኬሽን ቢሆን ወይም ትምህርት ቢሆን እንዳልከው ሁሉ ነገር ላይ ያዝ ይችላል። ግን አንደኛ የኢንተርቪው ፕሮሰስ ሲኖር ያ ሬዚዩሜ ሜቢ እድል ተሰጥቶት ኢንተርቪው ላይ ሲደርስ አንድ ኦፖርቹኒቲ ነው ነገሮችን ቬሪፋይ ለማድረግ። እኔ አሁን ዩዥዋሊ እኔ ጋር ሬዚዩሜዎች ሲደርሱ ብዙ ዲቴል ነገር ውስጥ አልገባም። ዩዥዋሊ አንድ ነገር ለምሳሌ ይሄን መስሪያ ቤት ሰርቻለሁ፣ እንደዚህ አይነት ስራ ሰርቻለሁ የሚል ነገር ካለ ኦኬ ቴል ሚ አባውት ስለዚህ ስራ ስለሰራኸው። ወል እንደዚህ ሶፍትዌር ኢንጂነሪንግ ነበርኩኝ፣ ይሄ እንደዚህ አይነት ሶፍትዌር እንትን ብያለሁ። ኦኬ ቴል ሚ ምን አይነት ስራዎች። ያችን አንድ ነገር ይዤ እሷን መተርተር ነው ዩዥዋሊ የማደርገውና ሪኸርስድ የሆነ መልስ ዩዥዋሊ አይሆንም። ምክንያቱም የምጠይቀው ጥያቄ ሬዚዩሜው ላይ ያለ ሳይሆን ከአንድ ነገር ላይ ተነስቶ እሷን ዲፕ ዳይቭ መሄድና ካን ዘ ፐርሰን ኮምፎርታብል ሆኖ ኤክስፕሌን ማድረግ ይችላል ወይ ጀስቲፋይ ማድረግ ይችላል ወይ፣ እሱ አንድ ነገር ነው። ሌላ ባክግራውንድ ቼክ ዩዥዋሊ ሬዚዩሜው ካለቀ በኋላ ማነው ኢንተርቪው ካለቀ በኋላ ኦፈር ቢሰጠው አንድ ሰው ባክግራውንድ ቼክ ይኖራል። ፓርት ኦፍ ኢት ያው የሰራውን ስራ ቼክ ማድረግ እንደዚህ አይነት ነገሮች ሊኖሩ ይችላሉ። ክሪሚናል ሂስትሪ ኤክሴትራ ኤክሴትራ፣ እሱም አንድ ቬሪፊኬሽን መንገድ ነው። ግን እንደዛም ሆኖ እንዳልከው የሚያመልጡ ነገሮች ሊኖሩ ይችላሉ። ዞሮ ዞሮ ስራው ላይ ያ ሰው ውጤታማ ካልሆነ it will show up። ኢንቴግሪቲም ችግር ካለበት it will show up። ሜቢ ስራውን ሊያገኝ ይችላል፣ ነገር ግን የሚዘልቅ ነገር ላይሆን ይችላል። እና ዩዥዋሊ እነዛን ሬፈረንስ ቼክ እናደርጋለን። በፊት ካሉ ማኔጀሮች የሚሰጡት ፊድባክ ካለ እሱንም ዩዥዋሊ እናደርጋለን። ያው የተቻለውን ቢደረግም ግን ከዛ ሊያመልጥ የሚችል ይኖራል። I don't know እናንተ ኤክስፒሪየንስ እንዴት እንደሆነ።
I think በእኛ መስሪያ ቤት እንግዲህ Saba can say something about it, but before I get the resumes, the human resource will verify most of the stuff. When I get the resumes, maybe 50, 60 of them, most of them are already being verified. But as Dagi said, at the end of the day, people lie, especially on experience or education. I've had an opportunity actually to see that in action. A couple of months ago, a guy said he has a knowledge about SQL and Tableau, and fortunately, one of my interview panel knows about it, and he started asking him a question, and finally he said, "No, well, I just went to school, but I didn't work on it." So those kind of stuff you will catch them, but Saba knows about the data stuff and what they do in the human resource. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you guys answered it really well. I have worked in the people department, and actually I was in charge of the compliance, human resource compliance organization. So a lot of things happen behind the scenes before the candidate is moved to the next level, right? Including background check and all the assessment. So that would be the worst thing you could do. You could be found out. But the bottom line is, I think a lot of times we think about a job as something we want to get to, but then how are you going to succeed if you came in with lies and you talking about stuff you didn't do? How are you going to like the job, right? It has to be win-win for the employee and for the employer, right? In order for that to happen, trustworthiness and integrity between both is going to be really important. So you want to be honest. A lot of times as you grow in your career, it's okay to kind of exaggerate what you've done when you were entry level, because now you've grown and you know a lot of things better. And so if you were an analyst, it's okay to say, hey, I have done a lot of research, right? But you can't lie about education, certification, and you cannot lie about things you've not done, because then you're going to be asked to do it, right? So it's really important that you have integrity and trustworthiness, because that's how it's going to be sustainable, right? You don't want to take a job that's going to be, it may take them 6 months to know or to find out that you really are not capable as what you said, or you don't have the skill set that you said you had, and then you will not be succeeding. So. But the other way is also throughout the interview. The interviews are for that, to weed out people who showed something on their resume and they were able to get in to the interview process. But the interviewer's role is to make sure the candidate can do the job and they can verify also the things that are there in their resume.
One little thing to add into that, not from the professional side. As believers, we have to be careful about what we write on our resume, because we are doing everything in front of the Lord. እዛ ጋ ሄዶ ዋጋ ማስከፈል አለማስከፈሉ አይደለም። እዚህ ላይ የጻፍነው ነገር እኛን ሪፕሬዘንት የማያደርግ ከሆነ እነዚህ ባለሙያዎች እኛን ከመጠየቃቸው በፊት የሚጠይቀን እግዚአብሔር አለ። ስለዚህ we have to be honest to that. If not, ዋጋ እንከፍልበታለን በኋላ። እና ተጠንቅቀን እንደ አማኞች ልናደርግ የሚገባ ነው። ሁልጊዜ ልናደርግ ይገባል። ቬሪፊኬሽን ቢኖርም ባይኖርም there is one to verify it. ተባረኩ። ሌላ ጥያቄ? ታንክ ዩ። ሌላ ጥያቄ ያለው ሰው? እሺ፣ ተመስገን።
I have a question to Dagum. Well, he gave us on resume, on header, I saw two type of format. I don't know which one is the right one. The first one, and the second one also, it's a little bit different. The format is different. I don't know which one I'm going to take. The other question is, back home, I was a data processing expert. I have so many experience in data processing on data warehouse, but that was traditional one. And now here I learned data analytics, but I don't have much. I'm working in internship, and I don't have 4 years, 6 years experience. But if I bring it that my home experience, it can be. But sometimes I'm getting difficulty in managing all this, and I don't know. What can you advise me on such situation for me?
Yeah.
Or to put something on my resume.
Yeah. So on the second question, just to make sure, you do have, your example is you have some experience in data processing back from Ethiopia. Now you're doing an internship. And similar
thing,
yeah. So maybe to touch on the first question about the two formats that I had, I think as long as you follow the layout that I had showed kind of 80% of the resumes have some similarity. You start with the header, your objectives, your summary, and then your experience, education. There's no right or wrong answer as long as you get the 80% right, because, like for data processing or if you're in analytics, probably there are some resumes that usually show the tools that you have worked with, software tools or the types of, databases that you've worked with as part of your summary, that maybe a new college graduate would not list those because they haven't had that work experience. So I would say, as long as you follow the general format, I think you'll be fine. Look at some sample resumes on the internet for your particular field and see how people have outlined their resume, so that will give you an idea as well. But I wouldn't say don't worry too much. It shouldn't be a copycat exactly of what you've seen maybe on the PowerPoint slide. As long as the general format follows the process and some of the do's and don'ts, you should be fine. The other thing I would say, I'm happy to look at your resume. So, at the end, I'm sure all of us would be happy. We can get in touch and happy to give you feedback. And this is for everybody as well. And then on the second question, so this is a common, situation where some of us have experience in Ethiopia. We come here, how do we connect the dots and get back to the field that we've been in? In my observation, some things that could help is maybe there is a certification or training that you can take here in the US. It could be, an associate's program in data science, or, a 3-month specific course in, SQL database management, or whatever the case might be, just to bridge the dots and connect the dots. And that might help you open up the opportunities to connect what your background in Ethiopia was, and then here. I would find maybe individuals who have had a similar background experience to see if they recommend, hey, you can take this 3-month course and that will open up doors for you because you have taken that training in the US. The internship is fantastic. I think that's a great way, even if it's not paid, to say that you have some experience in the US and you're using your data analytics process. So that's, I think, an easier way. If you can find a training, 3 months, 6 months. In my case, I went to a graduate school, so I did my master's, and that was kind of my bridge to get into the United States workforce. And to me, that might be helpful, and the internship definitely is a positive thing. So happy to catch up with you one-off, and we can brainstorm further as well.
Great. Is there anything you might add?
I think for me it's covered.
Okay. ጥያቄ ያለ ማን ነው? ዛክ።
First of all, I'd like to thank three of you, for the knowledge and you shared with us. And I would like to know what tips can you guys give us as far as personal development, for our community. Usually, we struggle, with the language barrier and articulation, all that kind of, in our job situations, and then how to grow ourselves and, to be like you and, to be influential for our community and ourselves, and anything you can give us, to grow ourselves. Thank you.
Anyone to go first?
So a couple of things I can think of. I really understand what you mean when you're talking about language barriers. When I came to the United States and going to graduate school, I barely spoke English. It was really, really challenging, and so you have to invest in it. I went to a program called Toastmasters. I don't know if anybody knows that, but it's a place where a lot of international people get together and practice how you present, and they give you feedback, they record you, and then you listen to it and you try to improve it, right? I can claim I still, I don't speak perfect English, but that's fine. I can communicate fine, and but I think you have to invest something into it. If that's something you want to do, there are a lot of resources out there that you can do to practice your English, right? At universities, for example, they provide free programs for international ISL programs to improve your spoken English and things like that. So look through that and trying to find resources to help you. And practice makes perfect, so you got to practice it as well, right? Who do you spend your time with is going important. For example, for me, when I spend a lot of time with people and in my community, I literally become, my English starts kind of going back to, the accent comes back, and I sometimes mix my English with Tigrinya, etc., right? So, if you have presentation that you're going to do the next day, you make sure you are thinking about that. And even with my husband, I speak to him in English so that, I kind of have that. So as you grow, it gets easier, but at the beginning, you just have to invest time in resources on it, right? Trying to practice. But at the end of the day, really, what I see, I've worked in the people organization here at America and even at Walmart. Diversity is celebrated, right? It's okay to have accent. It's okay to have different way of speaking, right? It's celebrated. All you need is, you have to have the confidence, but also you have to have the content, and also make sure you can communicate, obviously, right? But that should not be a barrier to your success, right? So think through that. It's okay. People are accepting, right? In a lot of places, they're looking for the thought process, the additional experience you bring to the table, how you add value, right? We spend so much time thinking about, the language, we miss the other things that we bring to the table, right? So make sure you are, spending a lot more time about what you bring to the table. What is your expertise? How are you going to help the company solve problems? And, if you are in a field that's for, let's say, analytics, you have to be reinventing yourself, staying up to date on new technology, Python, all of this new software, right? Make sure you are evolving with things, right? In the United States, things are moving faster, new technology coming. So how are you staying up to date in your field, in what you bring to the table? I think will be some of the most important things you could do.
Just to add, at the end of the day, you speak two language. If someone is trying to say, hey, your English is not as good as mine or whatnot, he can't speak your language. So that's what I always challenge them. So it's not easy. It's not, especially in the corporate world, they want that fluent speaker, a speaker who can eloquently explain himself or whatnot. At the end of the day, if you are a little bit wordy, that's fine, to get to the point. Saba said it right. Confidence. What you bring to the table is really important than what you say. If you say it in a different way, that's fine too. It takes time. It takes time for me. But the courage just to go out and speak, and the practice, and makes you perfect, I guess.
If I can add one more thing, I think in terms of professional development and development in general, and accents and different languages. In Ethiopia, Eritrea, we have a beautiful culture where we're very family oriented. We seek each other, we stick together, and sometimes that could become a barrier, right? We don't go out and interact with native English speakers or people from other societies. We're here at church together. When we go home, it's our families. When we work, we hang out with Habesha people. So I would say, and my advice is, whether it's an English language program, and I know we had some resources in the church for second language. We brought in some instructors to teach English for individuals who want to learn in the past. Other community centers, libraries have resources where speakers of a non-English language could come and practice and learn. So I think we need to seek and take advantage of those opportunities. As Saba mentioned, you get what you put into it. So if you make the effort to learn, develop, I think that would be helpful in terms of that language development skill. So we just need to look for those opportunities and take advantage of them when they're available.
I think the most important thing is network. I keep saying this: network. When you have network, when you know people, when you start communicating with people, for example, in a Bible study or any kind of special gathering we have, do we know each other, especially outside the spiritual realm, the day-to-day life of corporate world or work environment? We don't do that. It's very, very important to start communicating, know each other. In that way, you will have opportunity. If I know someone, who maybe his accent is not good, but he knows, what I need, what my company looking for, I have a tendency to refer him. And I did not say this, but usually the human resource, they weed out a lot of resumes, right? But if I know someone who can do the job, who has the knowledge, through the network, usually I have done this multiple times. I have to give them their resume to our human resource, say, hey, I want to consider this person. And that way, that resume can be added to the pool of candidates. And that's what the network is important. Saba mentioned about network. It's not only one way. It should not be just solely focused for a job, but part of it is just looking for a job as well. So think about that. Just use your network, use your friends, families, and make it. In Habesha world we call it Zamad. It's not Zamad, but Zamad no naman idollam. It's not really. Network is really knowing someone what he can do and what she can do, which you, the company or the hiring manager, utilize their knowledge or their capability. So I think that's important.
Great.
Okay. እኔ የሚጠይቀው ጥያቄ ሁላችንም ከአንዳንድ ከሀገር ቤት ሰርተን የመጣነው ስራ አለ። እዚህ ከመጣን በኋላ ሌላ እንሰራለን። ያን ኤክስፒሪየንስ እዚሁ ሬዙሜ ላይ ብናስቀምጥ ይጠቅማል? የመጀመሪያ ጥያቄ ነው። ሁለተኛ ጥያቄ ደግሞ እዚህ መጥቼ ጋዝ ስቴሽን ሰራውና በሆነ ጊዜ ትምህርት ተምሬ ሌላ ፕሮፌሽን ሙያ መወዳደር ቢፈልግ እዛ ጋዝ ስቴሽን የሰራውት ኤክስፒሪየንስ ለዚህ ይጠቅመኛል? አመሰግናለሁ።
General answer is yes, right? So I think you got to understand what the company is looking for, right? That's really, really important. That's where it starts, right? You cannot have one version of a resume and, like what my partner was saying, you can't just have one and just send it everywhere, right? You have to pay attention what they need, right? So the beginning is look at the job description. What are they looking for, right? So once you look at the job description and it matches a lot of the things they are looking for and you believe that you can do all of those, then you start connecting your experience to that, right? Even your job that you had in a gas station, what did you do? They're probably looking for a good customer experience person. A person who can lead different teams. So what did you do in that role that can match that, right? Because in a gas station role, you learn quite a lot of things, right? You are dealing with different types of customers, right? So that's, you know how to deal with them. How do you translate that to this new role that they're looking for? If you were, had different challenge that you were solving for, you had issues that you solved for, right? What can you translate to this new role, right? So I think though, it all starts with understanding what they are looking for, right? Because at the end of the day, they're looking for somebody to help them solve something. Companies don't just hire or just to have people or warm bodies, right? They are trying to solve some kind of problem and they're needing and looking for somebody who can come and do that for them, right? So understanding that is really, really the beginning of success, right? So once you understand that, you can say, hey, these are some of the things I did. Whether it's, parking or gas station, all of those help you learn some kind of skill along the way, right? If you had experience you back home, right? Whatever that might be, what was it that you can do? So it doesn't mean you just add it to the list of things on your resume to say, hey, I worked at the gas station. By the way, when you think of a resume, it's not a list of jobs you had. It's a list of things you were able to achieve in specific roles, the things that you were able to do for the specific company in specific. So you got to pay attention on what you put in the resume and what the accomplishment was, what the problem you solved was. So making sure anything you add to your resume can be connected to what they're looking for is, I think, going to be important. So based on that, then you can decide, do I have any skill set that I learned in those previous roles that's going to be relevant to this? You are trying to make sure the resume is relevant to what they're looking for. Don't waste their time. They're just going to scan it quickly and put it in the trash can if it doesn't solve their problem. So make sure it stands out. Make sure it talks about the things that they're solving for and how you historically have solved those kind of problems. And so anything relevant to that is relevant to the resume.
Just to add, when you write your resume, you don't have to say gas station. Sometimes it might, the way you say it and your resume matters. So that's how I say it. You do a lot of things in a gas station. I mean, my wife runs gas station. I've seen what she does and what the employee do. Really, sometimes the dealing with the customer in a difficult situation, how they perform, right? So instead of saying gas station, for example, the gas station can be a name, right? So it's so-and-so company, I have been a customer service and I've done such and such a thing and, customer resolution, all that stuff. You can just craft the way, you write on your resume.
ኦኬ መልካም እሺ እዛ መጨረሻ ላይ ማይክ ብትሰጠው
Thank you for your great presentation. In my former employment, I have been attending several trainings like you just guys did. Yours is super, and I really appreciate that. Saying this, probably I was a little bit out. I may have missed some of the presentations. I do have just a piece of question. In my previous job search, one of the frustrations I had was in completing the job application, and one of the areas was about the salary questionnaire that had been asked over and over. So do you think that, because the reason frustration for me was that the previous jobs that have been doing, the salary that I was getting was low, so I was aspiring for a higher salary. So I was always tempted that should I put what I earn honestly or not. This was really a temptation for me. So what do you think about this area? The other question or just a remark that I have is also in the last few years, I'm seeing a change of attitude with many employers, especially related with the Black Lives Movement, particularly after the death of George Floyd. And we can visibly see in some of the big companies as well as the media companies, some black people, women as well as guys coming up. So this what they call inclusiveness. So what do you think how important this is to our community, being as black people? So how do you think that we can, our people, our youngsters especially, reposition to take advantage of this change that's coming in the in the employers? Thank you.
I will start. I'll say one thing, but on the interview aspect of it. For the first question and the second question, I'll touch a little bit and I'll let Saba and Dagi talk about it. During the interview, even if they ask you how much you want to get paid, don't say anything. You don't ask any what you have seen this. What you need to do is how I can do the job. You see my qualification, and the job, itself, how much it pays. And, that is kind of like a way you touch base and you try to avoid that. And the negotiation is after you get the job. You don't want to negotiate salary during the interview. Avoid salary in any cost because it's not going to help you. So just tell them, hey, I presented myself, the position looking for this, and I can do this. And that is just a discussion we can do later. Or whatever that answer you're going to provide, do not tell them the salary. And I think salary is one of the unasked question during the interview. They should not ask you what you're paid. There are things they should not ask you during the interview. Your background, whether you're a black or a white, they should not ask age. Those kind of do not ask questions. If they ask, you can just, not answer. If you can, just don't answer it. But DEI is a big thing for American Airlines. DEI, diversity, inclusion, is really changing the whole dynamic. I understand that. I've seen it recently. Earlier, I told you a story about Alex. It has got some connotation, by the way. I've been through a lot of those kind of stuff. It was a difficult situation for black people to grow within a company in the corporate world. Where the corporate world, you're not, you don't fit into their, whatever, corporate culture. It's changing. It's refreshing to see. And we have a leadership conference this week. I saw a very dynamic vice president for American Airlines People Department. I haven't met her. I just want to meet Cole. It's just really amazing to see. And yes, it's changing the whole thing. So how we capitalize that change is important. Education, information. All these things needs to apply to our younger generation, not only younger generation, the workforce, even in the church. I hope it's going to continue. I hope it's not a 2-3 years phenomena and just die down, but it's refreshing to see that.
I think I want to re-emphasize what Alex said in terms of the salary. There is actually a law that they're not supposed to ask you how much you made. They can ask you how much do you want to make, right? So there is a diplomatic way to answer. You can say, hey, my salary expectations are in this range, right? Have a number, know your worth, right? We talked about in the networking, you should know what that kind of job pays, right? And you don't have to give them specific job a number as well either, right? Because I know a couple of people when we were hiring, they told us a number and it was lower than what the job pays actually, right? So you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, right? So you got to make sure you understand what role you're applying for. You know what that pays and have them ready. But at the end of the day, they cannot ask you how much you make, but they can ask you, what's your expectation, right? And they can ask you that. So have some kind of range to say, hey, my expectations are this, between this and this, right? By the way, if you're already talking salary, it must be they're considering you, so congrats, that's a good thing. But you have to softly answer that, hey, I'm excited that you want to talk about the role, I can't wait for you to make me an offer. We can discuss, I'm flexible, but just my expectations are between this and this, right? But in order to be able to do that, you should know what you're worth, what the job you're applying for pays. There's a lot of insights out there, whether it's Glassdoor or other kind of sites that tell you what this kind of jobs pay, right? So that's part of it. You should know what this pays and be ready for those types of questions. But if they start asking you about pay, they must be serious about you, so that's a good thing. And on the DEI side, yeah, it's very interesting. I joined American Airlines about 3 years ago, and still we lack Black leadership at the high level. To just give you an idea, in my organization, in the revenue management organization, I am the only Black woman that is in the leadership role, right? And so, a couple of things for me, right? So one, even though that brings a little bit of pressure to me, because I want to represent, I want to open up doors for others that come behind me. So I work harder. I want to make sure I show up, right? I want to make sure that when there are opportunities and where is discussion about talent, I know the talent that's across the organization that can do this type of jobs, right? So there is a lot of work that's happening. Before I joined the revenue management organization that I am in, actually I joined American Airlines in the people organization. So I've done a lot of work throughout the pandemic and George Floyd situation, helping the company, craft all those communication, obviously, right? Every company who came and said, we're going to do this and made commitments. So I work on those types of work, met with the CEO so many times and brought the data, how our representation numbers are and how we can improve, where we can improve. And so being part of that discussion and just to be able to have that kind of discussion with the top leadership and the CEO is new for American Airlines. And I was really excited to be part of that. But through that, we made a commitment. When companies come in and make a commitment, they have to follow through and follow through that, and they're going to have to continuously improve. And so I'm so proud of that work we've done because now, there is external pressure as well. You made a commitment, you have to work on it. So we are really focused on bringing the right talent to the organization, but we're always thinking about diversity, right? Just like the NFL example he was mentioning, we are introducing systems, processes, and programs to say, in your candidate pool, you have to have diverse candidates. You have to have women, you have to have people of color, because if you don't have them in your candidate pool, obviously you're not going to have them in your hire and in your team, right? So that's where it starts. So companies cannot say, you have to hire a Black person, but there is a pressure behind the scenes, they have to be part of the candidate pool. So that's a good thing, right? We should bring our foot forward because they're going to be looking for diverse talent, but at the end of the day, companies are only going to hire a person that's going to solve their problem. So you got to make sure, when you get those opportunities to the interview and to be part of that pool, to show up, right? To be really clear about what their expectations are and how you're going to bring that. And part of the network is so broad, right? When you see a job description and job opening out there, you go apply, find out if there is anyone in your network. How many of you are on LinkedIn, right? Are you guys on LinkedIn? Do you guys know what LinkedIn is? Right. Right. A lot of people spend time on Facebook. Facebook doesn't do anything. Brings rumors and Yeah, LinkedIn is a professional network site where pretty much you post your resume there and you go find people to network with. Find us, find me on LinkedIn, and I have when there's a job, I have an opening, or somebody in my team or in my peers, if they have opening, I post it there, right? So you can take a look. But when you see an opening, see if anyone in your network is connected to that person who has a job out there. So reach out to them. Hey, I'm really interested in this role. I would like to talk to you. What I bring to the table. Do you think I'm qualified to this job? So all of those things take you one more level closer to getting that job you want, right? So that's also investment. You have to make sure you have presence in the professional network site and to have your resume there. And the same thing, when you put things on LinkedIn, it's also just like resume. You have to be really clear. It cannot be, I just have gas station job. No, what did you do there? What was the experience you learned there? What did you experience there? What kind of problems did you solve? What kind of issues did you solve, right? So you have to put a lot of thought about what you put on LinkedIn as well. Because honestly, for me, when I have a job opening and somebody applies, if their resume, kind of pops up and it's my top 5, I go to LinkedIn to see how they show up there, right? What kind of articles are they posting, and who are they connected to? Are they connected to somebody in my field, right? Have they attended any conferences that is in this field? So it does a lot of things for you, and have a presence on LinkedIn.
If I may add one more thing, I think to your last question, there are a lot of things going on right now that are in favor of job seekers, which is including the DEI, the diversity discussion that a lot of organizations are having. For instance, in our company, one of the things we started doing is going to historically black colleges to recruit colored candidates. So that's one example, of all the colleges we go to. A couple of years ago is when we started specifically going to black universities, because you have to widen the network of where you get candidates. So there's a lot of conversation. I think we should encourage our children, the grown-ups, to be involved in societies if they are in school, whether it's a black society that they have, maybe that's an opportunity for them to be involved in, develop some leadership experience. But it is working, I think, in my perspective, in their favor, because there's more attention from organizations to widen up, who they recruit and how they want to build diversity in the workforce. The second thing is, as all of us know, unemployment is very, very, very low, historic low at this point. There are millions of unfilled positions across industry. And this is, I think, our opportunity. I just encourage everybody here or listening or, through our influences, our families, pay and benefits are going up. A lot of organizations are trying to fill the positions they have open. So this is the time for us to, pray about, think about, is there a better opportunity for me if I prepare and put in the work to apply for a different position? So I just want to throw that out and encourage all of us to, okay, what's the next step for me? Because again, there are a lot of things working in the favor of candidates. It was not that case when I graduated from my engineering program in 2001. That was when 9/11 hit. That was when all the energy businesses are going down, and that was a tough time as a job seeker. Now it's the reverse. So let us kind of pay attention, take the advice that we talked about, look at our networks, how we better prepare ourselves for interviews, polish up our resumes, and see if new doors would open up for us. So take advantage of the moment.
Great. I think we are running out of time. It is 12:11. Let's take one last question from Tamaskin.
Again, thank you. Recently, many recruiters reached out to me, and their question is, after discussion, how much, if we give you offer, how much you expect? That's, I think, most of the recruiter asked me that kind of question. I don't know. I always say something. I expect this much, I expect this much. I'm always saying, I don't know if that answer is right or not. And they ask questions like, why are you leaving from your company? And also, do you have interview going on around you, or do you get offer? This type of question they ask. I don't know how I'm going to answer. And the other thing is, God gave us opportunity to connect with you guys, and you are, I think, it's a big resource for us. But yes, we can get you in LinkedIn, but can we have your personal email or phone number to reach you out, in case if we need help? That's it.
You have my phone number, and I will ask Saba if she's willing to give her email, personal email, and yeah, I'm pretty sure you can get Dagish as well. But I just want to add one thing earlier we didn't mention. I mean, usually we said network can be people, and network can be conferences. And I mentioned earlier as well, I said in a Black Engineers Association, it's an association conference, but in the conference, there are 150 so companies out there recruiting people right on the spot. That is just like an amazing opportunity. How much you pay? Maybe $300, $400. Because you're not a member, they just ask you to pay something. Look for those. Hispanic Engineers Association, just I'm talking about on the engineering side. Female aviation, there's one also there. And there's so many conferences. If you have opportunities to go to conferences, if you pay a little more, go there. Because it's not you going to different companies. They are coming to you. So you can have that big opportunity, big audience on the same spot. You can go to, if you have time, you can go to like 150 of them and just explore. They call it Engineering Association Conference, but I've seen Toyota there hiring people for their, Plano office. And actually, I did refer one of our, candidates, and I said, you know what, you're well suited. Go talk to them. He did, and he got a job. Such an opportunity is great instead of just sitting and trying to find companies, go to those companies. So I'll look for those conferences, job, career fairs, and just be ready and find them, whatever they are. And Dagi was saying, right, I think we are struggling to fill positions. And I had 2 engineering positions about like 6 months ago, and I struggled to get the right candidate. And there is a lot of opportunity nowadays. So use those opportunities. The time is now, I guess. And thank you.
Great. You had one? Okay. Are you okay to answer? Yeah. Okay. Sammy.
I'm asking like the interview one. When we got interview, mostly it happens for me like, what's your weakness? So this question is for real. It is hard to answer it. So mostly what I say is like I give them kind of like positive weakness. I'm hungry, or I'm really selfish to learn about this and whatever. So, through your experience, can you mention something helps for us for the next time to answer some questions if you have it.
Well, I will start, and I'll let them just add, different perspective as well. That is the most common question. What's your weakness, right? You're not going to tell the company your weakness, period. Your weakness has to be your positive. You got to be smart how you tailor it. For example, you said, "Oh, I am a detail-oriented person, and I'm always," just this is an example, "I'm always looking at detailed stuff, and very detailed, and sometimes it's become a hindrance for the progress. And in the past, I looked this, and I've done this to improve it, and I improved it." This is the way you craft yourself. It's just twist the negative into positive. You're saying it, and just show them you're doing something about it. You're not just saying, you cannot tell the interviewer you're negative as a negative. What you have to tell them is like, yes, in the past that was negative, you have done something about it, and you're improving, and you're getting a lot better now. That's the way you have to craft it, but I'd like them to add.
Yeah, you're guaranteed that question will show up. It's a tough one. I think if it was me, what I'm interested to hear about weaknesses is, number one, you recognize that you have areas for improvement. It doesn't mean that it's a huge, weakness that would impact your ability to work for that company. But it is, as it relates to your opportunity, what do you want to improve on, and what are you doing about it? So it's not about just the weakness, but how are you addressing it? So somebody might say, my weakness is in my job, I tend to do all the work myself, and I have a hard time giving others to work on it, but I'm learning how to delegate and work with others. So, present that opportunity that you've noticed, but also what you're doing to solve that. And are you learning and improving from it? So that, to me, if somebody says, I don't have any weakness, that's a red flag. Sometimes what I ask is, what have you heard is an opportunity for your improvement in your performance review? And that way you cannot say, there's no improvement opportunity for me. So it's what can you work on? You can position it like that, and then what are you doing to solve that would be how I would answer it. Does that help?
We had a whole bunch of questions up here, but we just decided to give the chance to you guys. But there is one question that I don't want to pass. How do you see gaps on resumes? I mean, especially for maternity leave, or it could be anything like that. How do you consider that?
So gaps in resumes between the time frame?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've seen individuals just skip a gap. Maybe for 2 years they were not working, but definitely it will be one of the questions we will ask during the interview. Kind of explain to me, between 2008 and 2010, what were you doing? And then the person would explain that. In some instances, people say, just to be sensitive to that gap, I would say maybe I was on maternity leave, or I was caring for a family member, and they put that on the resume, just a brief item on what you're doing. So if you have a good reason, I would list it out. That way, to me, it shows me that you've thought about it and you're upfront and honest about it. If you have a good reason, just one line, during this time I was caring for a family member, or I was going to school, something like that.
Okay. Anything?
That's very good. That's a very good question. Honesty is the greatest thing. Putting something, particularly some employers, they look for family related. Caring for family, that means something. The company can appreciate that. Maternity leave, that you appreciate as an interviewer when someone put those kind of stuff, because you're family oriented as well. That's good.
Oh, I totally agree. And to your point, companies are becoming very accepting of that, right? Because if you want, diverse and inclusive workforce, women need to be included as well, and women care for families most of the time, and they might take maternity leave. So it's honesty is the best answer. But I think you got to frame it. Hey, I took time to spend time with family, or raise a child, or whatever that might be, and then you follow that. Especially if you're in the field of analytics or technology. Things might have evolved, so you got to make sure, hey, during that time, these are some of the things I've done. Because I had time, I was able to, do this kind of webinars or attended this kind of conferences, or I learned this. I took the initiative and learned how to code in Tableau, right? You have to be doing that kind of stuff to make sure you're keeping yourself up to date and you're not being disconnected completely from the workforce, and they have to retrain you how to show up, right? So make sure you're explaining what the reason is, and a lot of companies are accepting. By the way, if the company is not accepting of your reason, it's probably the company you don't want to work for, right? So make sure you be honest and tell them what it is, and then hopefully you're developing yourself as well. So use it to your advantage to say, hey, I took that time to develop myself, and these are some of the skills I learned when I was out, because I had time, kind of thing.
መልካም እንግዲህ እግዚአብሔርን እናመሰግናለን። በመካከላችን እንደዚህ አይነት የራሳችን የሆኑ ሪሶርሶች በመኖራቸው ጌታ የተመሰገነ ይሁን። ስለነበረን ጊዜ እግዚአብሔርን እናመሰግናለን። ዳጊ፣ ሳባ፣ አስተዋይ እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። we are thankful ስለመጣችሁ thank you so much። ምናልባት እንደዚህና የመሳሰሉ የወንድሞች ህብረት የሚያዘጋጃቸው ፕሮግራሞች ሲኖሩ ተዘጋጁና ተካፈሉ ወገኖቻችን። ቅድም እንዳልኳችሁ ለሰርሊ ለእናንተ ጥቅም ብቻ ሳይሆን አብሯችሁ የሚጓዘውን ሰው ደግሞ ለመጥቀም የምትችሉት እንደዚህ አይነት ነገሮችን ስትማሩ ነው። አሜሪካ ውስጥ ብዙ ኦፖርቹኒቲ ነው ያለው፣ ግን ይሄንን ባለማወቅ ምክንያት ወንድሞቻችን እህቶቻችን ዋጋ እየከፈሉ ነው ያሉት። let's help them out። እኛ ራሳችንም እንጠቀም። ስለዚህ ወደ ወንድሞች ህብረት ስትጠሩ በሌላ ጊዜ የምትከታተሉም ቢሆን ጆይን አድርጉ። አብሮንም ያገለግሉትን ወንድማችንን ነጋን፣ ታደንና ዶክተር ዮናስን ደግሞ እናመሰግናለን ይሄን ኦርጋናይዝ ስላደረጉልን። ታንክ ዩ ስለመጣችሁ እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። እናንተም ስለመጣችሁ እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። ታንክ ዩ። ጨርሰናል ፕሮግራማችንን።